On today's Showlux podcast, I am joined by two legends of the publishing and media world. They are here to talk all about their new book, All the Cool Girls Get Fired, which has some anecdotes from some seriously impressive names.
I mean, Oprah says it best. The setback is a setup.
The advice that you really need to hear if you have just been let go.
We are very good at our jobs. We're and are and in our roles, and we lost our jobs. And those two things can exist together.
And how owning being let go is the fastest way to recover.
Here's what we're doing. Just like, yes,
Yes.
that's typical. And I said, we're going to take a picture of ourselves. We're going to look so cute. And we're going to caption it, All the Cool Girls Get Fired.
So give it a listen and please do subscribe and enjoy. Welcome to the Showlux podcast with me, Charlotte Collins. This week is something a little bit different. I am in conversation with two legends of the fashion and media industries, Laura Brown and Christina O'Neill, to talk about their new book, All the Cool Girls Get Fired. I have quite a sycophantic additional paragraph here, which, I mean, I'll read, but just bear with, okay? It says, it's sharp, funny, and refreshingly honest, exploring success, reinvention, and what happens when life forces you to start again. We chat about their incredible careers, how the book came to life, and the lessons they've learnt along the way.
Oh,
Welcome both.
and the friends we've made along the way.
Sycophantic, but accurate, but very accurate. This is the book. What a cool book.
What a cool book.
I love it.
It's got cool written on it.
Thank you.
It really does. We will get into being fired and that chat, but a bit of background to start with about both of you. Can you just give me like a potted CV where you got to before you got fired?
Sure. I mean, it's funny because I moved to New York on September the 4th, 2001, and I actually met Christina at a fashion show, the Marc Jacobs show, on September the 10th, 2001.
Side note, what a week to move to New York.
I know.
Yeah.
It was that, wasn't it? Anyway, and so, but it was interesting because we were similar in age and and we came up sort of together but distinctly apart in magazines. So yeah, I'd been in magazines in Sydney, moved to New York with my 2 bags and a dream. And yes, and September 11th happened, and I worked at New York Post for a minute, and then I worked at the ill-fated Talk magazine for Tina Brown and Harvey Weinstein, heady days, and then W magazine Details, and then I spent 11 years at Harper's Bazaar where Christina actually was working, and we were there for about 7 or 8 years together. And then for me, I left Bazaar, and we're a bit backwards in our chronology now, but I left to become editor-in-chief of InStyle magazine in 2016.
And we're there for how many years?
5 and a bit.
Christina?
And Christina was...
Yeah, so I started in media in New York in 1998, which was when I graduated from college, and worked at Time Out New York, which was going very strong back in the day before the internet.
Computers.
And New York Magazine, landed at Harper's Bazaar, which is where I was working the night I met Laura at that Marc Jacobs show. Stayed there for 12 years, and then in 2013 late 2012 went to the Wall Street Journal magazine.
Mm-hmm. And what about now? We'll get to the firing chapter, but what are you both up to these days, just for context?
I run my own company called LB Media, which is basically LB in the media, and I work across fashion, entertainment, nonprofit, trying to sort of leverage the entertainment and style community to be helpful in the global community rather than just selling bags, which I did a lot of.
Nothing wrong with selling
Love
bags.
a bag, got plenty.
And I work at Sotheby's. I'm the head of media, and I relaunched their magazine about a year ago now. And yeah, so I'm almost 2 years into the job there.
She's gainfully employed. I just
Got my
swan
401k
around.
back.
Well, we were talking
what's a 401k in the UK? You call it like super anyway? Is that
what you get when you're fired?
They invest in your retirement.
Oh, that's just called pension contribution.
pension?
Pension.
Isn't it great? You sound so old so
Yeah.
early.
You both came up in like the absolute kind of glory days of publishing in New York. I mean, that is the real, as somebody who listens to Tina Brown's Vanity Fair Diaries like on repeat as a comfort listen. I mean, that is really the heyday of it. Can you paint
Hers was.
Well,
okay,
maybe
She was a bit
Tina
before
Brown.
us. Yeah.
We never worked at Condé Nast.
Never worked at Condé Nast. Never had a
Never
town
had
car.
a-
I did work for Tina Brown briefly for 6 weeks at
but I
Talk
think the
Magazine,
budgets were
which then
different
closed
then.
down.
Right, I
So
was-
it was sort of, we were at like the fabulous sort of death gasp of that era.
The fabulous funeral.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we of course, it was still very glamorous, super creative, but it wasn't those sort of heady days of the car idling, or the free mortgages or all of those kind of things.
None of that
kind
applied to us.
That was-
we
okay,
never.
noted.
We were always like Hearst or Time Inc. or somewhere that was not Condé Nast.
Okay, noted. Slight difference. But paint a picture of what the time was like. Okay, you weren't getting mortgages paid for, but what do you remember about the 90s?
Well, it was
in that
pre-social
world?
media.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the editors really were the kind of original influencers.
Yeah.
Certainly the editors-in-chiefs and the creative directors and the fashion stylists who sort of ruled the industry at that time. But it was such a, wonderful period because
Feverish, really. Everyone was
Yeah.
running around and wanting to see and be and do, and 3 things a night, from a fashion show to an art opening to everything, especially also our ages at the time. We would have been like
we had energy
sort of
back
late
then.
20s or whatever. And it was like, it was optimistic. And it was at that sort of moment where everything was sort of curated and you wanted to be in all these places. And it was like full hype, Sex and the City era, like all of those kind of like, sort of mythological parts of New York that a lot of us grew up watching. We certainly lived that for a time, even though, the reality of working and paying your rent and everything is,
the hustle was
grounded a lot of that. But we did have that kind of cinematic experience. And again, because we were young and still starry-eyed about it too, which helps. Yeah.
I want to talk about the getting fired piece, but a bit of
What?
content. Yeah, I know. Believe it or not,
We got fired?
Turns out. I mean,
That sounds bad.
you're cool girls. Then it turns out that means you're cool. Let's kind of go back a bit because you're obviously talking from experiences of being fired from major roles, right? This is kind of at the peak of your career. What about your experiences before that? And in that the kind of illustrious CVs that you both just sort of listed off, what was your experience of the things that you document a bit in this book? Of the hiring, the firing. Do you feel like what was your experience? Were you fired before in more junior roles?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a death knell. I've been fired twice before. Once from not fired, like when things literally closed down, but same diff. It was a magazine, my first magazine job in Australia called Australian Family. Australian Family closed down. That was a bit of a bugger, and also as did Talk. And I had just arrived, and I remember I was on a shoot with like oiled up actors, with this amazing photographer called Melvin Sokolsky, who was very famous, and he did all those pictures of the women floating on the orbs in the Seine. So the idea, this is hilarious. It was about young Hollywood, and so the idea was that young actors were going to be photoshopped emerging from eggs.
Sure.
So there was like ostrich eggs in one corner, and oiled up actors in the other corner. And I remember I got a phone call saying the magazine's closed down. I remember walking back into the room and there was Gabrielle Macht from the show Suits on a plinth going, emerging. And I had to go, I'm sorry, you're not emerging today, we're closed. So that is, too. So I'm actually 3 for 3.
Okay.
3 for 3.
That's experience.
Yeah, I had not been fired before. We also came up at a time when you could work in a place for, a really long stint. And especially when you start at the bottom, right? So the job I left Harper's Bazaar, I was number 2 on the masthead at that point. But when I started, I was maybe number, 42. So in the, ensuing years, it was really, kind of working my way up. And so it wasn't so much about moving titles as much, but you worked within an organization and, you stayed for the long haul. I think that's, changed dramatically now. Now, we say in the book, like, no one can really follow a resume like they used to. It's not the sort of like linear, every 2 years, you're changing, if that happened in the old days, someone would be like, what's wrong? Why does she have so many like different spots on her resume? Whereas, now
we
I
would
think
stick
that's-
around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You stuck around.
Because things weren't changing so rapidly for a while.
Yeah.
And they all changed all at once.
Is that why you think it's changed? Because the landscape is changing?
Oh, yeah. The media landscape, I think we were a bellwether for so many other industries in the US, which is being decimated by layoffs now. And I know the same's happening in the UK, but it's hundreds upon thousands of people. media, it started, happening with the advent of social and digital and the advertising model changing and tech. And so, the media started fracturing 5 or so years ago now, and it's still going. But what's interesting about it is, to Christina's point, that say if an anchor got laid off from CNN, then they would start a Substack or a podcast or whatever. So there's so many different ways to create and to be in the media now. And we think that that's exactly the same in the workplace generally. Like the individual can be the economy. If you want to be an entrepreneur, not everybody does. If someone wants a pension, and but it's a fascinating time because it's the traditional things have been falling away and there is a vulnerability with that. But if you kind of open your eyes to what might be available to you, where you don't have to spend 2 years sitting in one place, where you don't have to feel so obliged, there can be more opportunity. But it's it's quite stark, and and you have to sometimes be shocked into that, like by getting fired.
We were.
Yeah.
We have a perception here in the UK about working in New York, in America, that it's quite easy to be fired there, right? Like there's a lot
like
of
in the movies.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of kind of legal framework here that protects employees, which are kind of the way we're led to believe is that that's not the case there. So is it almost? Do you think there's almost a sort of mentality in American workplaces in New York, in that kind of hustle culture, that it is kind of inevitable at some point? Because I'm not sure that exists here.
I mean, listen, I think if you're at the top of your field, certainly the lead anchors on a news program will have a contract. They'll have an agreement with the workplace where whether they fill the duration of the contract, they are covered financially for whatever that looks like. But much further down the totem pole, it does not look like that. And I would say that maybe 95% of American workers don't have any net or any security or guarantee that anyone is going to take care of them.
And we have greater vulnerabilities with healthcare as well. So there's just you are so much more vulnerable in losing your job. Here you can go to the NHS, right?
Yep.
In the United States, people oftentimes have to take jobs because it offers them healthcare, because otherwise they can't afford to go to the doctor.
So there is a level of expectation in kind of ingrained in the workforce, or not?
I don't think it's expectation, but I think that's just sort of ingrained in how.
Yeah, America's,
the workplace, like that's just how it works.
The best and the worst of it is like why people want to move to America is all the opportunity, all the stuff, all the money, all the things you can make, like in the movies, And the worst of it is you're out, and but it's unambiguous, I guess. I think sometimes people go like, oh, you can't fire anyone in France. You know what I mean? And there's sometimes, maybe the ideal is somewhere in between the two. Things are not as static and not as vulnerable.
Talk to me about getting fired.
It was terrific.
Both of you tell me your stories. I mean, and we're talking about the big fire, like the fired with a capital F, right?
With a capital F for yes. Well, I'll go first because I was chronologically first, wasn't I? In February 2022, myself. So at InStyle, I had worked for 3 different corporate owners. Yep. So Time Inc., which was dying when we walked in, and then somewhere called Meredith, which is a bunch of conservative guys from like Des Moines, Iowa, and then a company called Dotdash. And Dotdash bought us in November 21, and then in February 2022, laid us all off on Zoom. And I'd been a bit, as I call it, dog out the window. I was sort of thinking of doing my own thing and had registered my own business. And I was like, didn't think I was going to go then though.
Sure.
And then one day we all get this, I got 20 minutes notice, but then we all got called onto I don't know if you say this here, all hands meeting, which sounds
Full
like,
house, we'd call
it sounds like a kumbaya, like a hug, but you're always getting fired. And so my team of like 35 was asked to be on a Zoom, and then they read, the HRs, they're reading the script and we're closing down the print edition, And that was kind of that. And I remember I called my team back and it was like, I could get back on this Zoom right now. And I was attempted to be, I can say this here, Churchill, and basically said, your value is yours, your knowledge is yours, everything you've done is yours. Don't be proud of it, take it, move on with it. Don't give these people power over you, and don't let them take it away from you. Which did end up in a way being spine for this, but we were also like shocked. We were like, how do we download our contacts? There was like one guy called Brian who knew how to do it. And Brian, and we're all sort of scrounging around with each other, trying to give ourselves somewhere to land, I guess. And I spent a lot. And again, because I thought I was going to work for myself, I was absolutely shocked. And I think in a way, I think shock is an armor. Because I spent sort of less time on myself than I did with babies and my team and that sort of thing. but yeah, and so that was, and then I had another little distraction because I went off to get married a couple of months later. But yeah, and then I was like, okay, this is on me now, isn't it? And I have to, my money lasts, my payout lasts this long, and then I have to pay for things. I am now responsible for paying $2,000 worth of healthcare every month, and that sort of reality starts to hit you pretty hard. But yeah, cut to a bit over a year later.
I got fired.
What?
And mine was sort of the opposite situation to Laura's, where she was, it was her and her entire team. I was singled out. I was one of one who got fired from my group. What had happened was there had been a regime change at the top of the masthead at the newspaper, and the new boss, it had taken a beat to get, time with her. And by the time I did, it had been, about 3 months into her tenure. And so, I prepared thinking I was going to go in and, knock her socks off and show her all the things that we had accomplished in the 10 years and, talk about the next 10. Unfortunately, that was not the case. And she moved our meeting 10 minutes before from her office to the HR room, got the script, got the boot.
Can you talk a bit about the shame associated with that? There's obviously, I guess you're using the word fired as a blanket for yours, I suppose, describes redundancy more accurately. Perhaps?
We use the term fired because it's losing your job. And, and like you can spin it 10 ways till Sunday. But someone was talking to me the other day. Fired is the best word because that's how it feels. It's very harsh. It's not like, oh, I was let go. That sounds like someone gave you a hug on the corner and put you on the bus. It's like you can use every euphemism you want to describe what happened to you. But if you're obfuscating, if you're spinning, if you're, it's a bad word, bullshitting, you know what I mean? It's going to slow you down. It's going to slow down your recovery and your search for something else. So we have never used any other word beside that because it certainly, it also comes with some ego for us. We are very good at our jobs. We're and are and in our roles, and we lost our jobs. And those two things can exist together. And so the entire point of this book, is this shame situation. Shame is a choice, and it's a choice that so many women make because. What do you mean? I lost my job. It must mean I'm bad. It must mean I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. Again, look around. In November 2025, there's an epidemic of layoffs. They don't have an exclusive on this anymore. So if you're already knocked down, you're already a beetle on its back. You've got to sort out your money, your income, and again, health insurance in our country. Why would you then? It's like those Disney cartoons when the anvil lands on the head and it's all like stars and birds. And then you pick up another big weight of shame and go, oh, I'll carry that round too. Why? Does you no favors.
Which is all amazing advice. How were you able to apply that to yourselves at the time?
Yeah, I was snapped into the realization pretty quickly because about 4 or 5 days after I was fired, I went to an event, a very sort of public industry event. And I thought I was walking into this room literally wearing like a scarlet F. And I thought everyone's head was going to turn. They were going to wonder what I was doing there. Walk into the party, see the first couple people. And they're like, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? Everyone's sort of caring about their business. And I realized that either no one knew or no one cared.
Yeah.
And it sort of reset it instantly for me because it was such a reminder that it was in my head.
Yeah.
And really what you carry with you is often self-created. And in that moment, I was like, oh, right, everyone's just self-absorbed and they only care about themselves. Or how my firing applies to them, right? Like, are they people who I employed who might be affected? No one's actually caring about you. They're caring about how your situation impacts them.
It's like, I'll do anything for a Game of Thrones example, but it's like no one's walking behind you on the street going, shame, shame. It's in your head. And again, in the context, the logical, which is what we really urge women and men to contextualize themselves in these situations too. And it's like, especially what was it, Verizon or something we were looking at this morning had 20,000 layoffs. So if you're sitting there going, I must suck because I lost my job, there's 20,000 more of you there. And so again, the faster you own it, there's also a community there for you. And if you don't own it, you don't see that.
Yeah, which I suppose is why in my head there is that slight difference between when it's the en masse layoffs versus an individual redundancy. But I take your point that you can feel the same way regardless, right?
I mean, I was amongst a group of several senior leadership positions at the Journal that were all fired. But at the time, it wasn't like me and my team. It was more like me and sort of similarly leveled
But you were the only one who
peers.
admitted it.
But I was the only one who admitted it. And it wasn't until the day that rolled around when we had all exited that I realized that there were other people in the organization, because they just sort of went back to their desks and kept working and then left for personal reasons or whatever it was.
Like weeks later.
Weeks
And
later.
carried that around.
And it kind of blew my mind, because there wasn't a day that I could have walked in and pretended, knowing that I had, been told like goodbye.
Yeah.
And I had about 6 weeks that I had to sort of stay to work through. And basically, if I had to walk in every day and just pretend, and then one day be like, oh, I'm going to leave because I'm, going to set up this other thing. Also, if you're lying about it, then who's going to help pull you along, pull you forward? The word fired instantly signals to people that like you're in the market. You're looking
Something big
for
happened.
work.
You're ready to go.
And you want to like talk about it, connect with people, do these things. And if you're home pretending like everything's cool and you're leaving because you have, for like personal reasons or other projects or, whatever.
And it's so isolating.
Yeah.
It's so isolating to do that, because you're sitting at home with your comfort duvet of lies. There's no real comfort in it, because you're trying to maintain a sense of appearance, but for what?
Yeah.
And so we just because it's so traumatic and there's so much vulnerability. So the faster you can just push yourself along into the new whatever that is for you, the ownership is the best way to do that.
So is that what you both did in terms of how you publicly
we
went?
Instagrammed it, babe.
Did you? You went straight in with the Instagram.
Yeah, we went straight in. We were so when Christina it was a bit over a year from after me. I was in South Africa at the time when she first texted me. And where did you text me from again?
The HR office.
She was getting canned. I mean, talk about cat-like reflexes.
You're like, excuse me, I just sent a text. One moment, please.
Literally like,
As good friends do. I got back and we were going out for a drink, and don't know if anyone's done that here. And great. And and on the way to the drink, I said to Christina, here's what we're doing. She was like, yes, that's typical. And I said, we're going to take a picture of ourselves. We're going to look so cute. And we're going to caption it, all the cool girls get fired.
Love it. Goosebumps.
And she was like,
okay.
And this is entirely sober, so to be fair and clear. And then we after the drink, we did post that, because again, it was like, yeah, we got fired. Yeah, we're good. Like, come on. And we were greeted by this absolute deluge of responses from women, just that sort of cinematic bing, 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 bing on Instagram of like, oh my God, you did. Oh, I thought so. Oh, legends. Oh, actually, me too. All these sort of reactions. And as we were processing that sort of the night before, but the next morning, Christina called me and said, this is a book. And at the time was pressure enough to also, this is 2.5 years ago, pressure enough to even see the layoffs that were starting around us even then, and to know that there were people like us. This was a book that we needed, and there were people like us who needed it too, even then, even when this was, a couple of weeks after she'd got canned, recognized that.
Yeah, there's so much you don't know about getting fired. And when you're in it and you're so vulnerable and you're so overwhelmed, I just wanted almost like a checklist of all the things that I wanted to make sure that you're engaging with your soon-to-be former employer about. So, whether that's, your severance package or, your healthcare package or whatever those things look like, plus, all the things that you probably have never really had to think about. And so I just wanted a list. I couldn't find all the information that we ended up putting in this book in one place. And so for all of our, highly skilled, decades in media,
we're a bit useless.
I was like Googling things like for, it was kind of shocking to me.
No one teaches you this stuff, right?
No. But that's what this book is. It's basically, 50% service manual of, just really the brass tacks and things you must know when you're leaving a work situation. And then 50% inspirational stories from these women who we were lucky to speak to who, reminded us. And I think, again, we were still sort of fresh off our firings when we talked to many of them.
You were fresher than me. You were so fresh.
I was pretty fresh. But it was such a great lesson in time and how time is so healing. And yet every single woman we spoke to could take us back to the room the minute she was told that she was being fired.
Like a muscle memory.
You know, and some of these women had been fired over 50 years ago, like Oprah. And so that was sort of reassuring on some hand to know that while she still carries it, you know, with her and it's part of her story, obviously, you know, she obviously has come so far from that day in that, you know, conference room in Baltimore when the guy fired her.
Regardless of your financial circumstance, and obviously it's easier to have more money than this, you know, and it affords you more time and all those things. But the feeling is the same, and the feeling is shit. It's shitty. And so that's the reminder of bringing all this group together. And the number one, it was like there's a community out there, and you think, what do you mean Oprah? Oprah just walks around Maui with a basket of vegetables. Like nothing bad ever happened to her. And it did, you know, and she was embarrassed. She didn't want to tell her dad. She was ashamed. And all of these women were in that position. But we also deliberately spoke to highly successful or famous women precisely because they weren't that once. And secondly, to sort of fire up your dreams a bit. To be like, what's ever going to happen to me? Oh, hang on a minute. Oprah did that, or Carol Burnett did that, or whomever.
I was going to ask about exactly that. Both of you were fired at a point at which you were very established. You had, you know, you've referenced it a few times. You had the confidence in your bank of knowing that you had the X amount of years of experience and contacts and everything. So what your advice would be to people who are maybe less experienced, younger, on their firing journey, but
our firing journey.
That wonderful journey of life. But perhaps it's that, and that is the reason to speak, you know, to have got those anecdotes.
My husband, who's not a scientist, he's a writer, but he actually came up with something that I thought was so clever. He calls it sort of the Johnny Appleseed theory. But essentially, whatever stage you are in your career, right, you're throwing out seeds. Through your work, your contacts, your enthusiasm, all of those sorts of things. You're throwing these seeds around. And as the years go by, and yes, of course, when you're younger, it's less, but they do start to grow. And you look around, there is an orchard there for you. And all your experience, all of this stuff you've created is almost like a platform that you stand on. And you get taller and taller and taller. That experience makes you taller and taller and taller, unless, again, you let yourself forget it. And so if you're 23, 24, whatever, and you work for a year, you get fired, you still have that year. You know, so that's, and yeah, when you get to our advanced years, you got 30 years of that. But, you know, that's the most key thing to remember is like, we had an expert in the book, she's brilliant. And Natasha Bowman, her name is, and she said, you're like a library book, right? So all your knowledge, all of your stuff is in a book. And so your employer borrows that book. And then maybe the employer gives a book back and checks it out and fires you, whatever it is, but you're still the book. They don't own you. They don't own that book. And I'm hitting the microphone with my fervor. But they don't own you that. And only in your head do you give them that ownership. So you take that book somewhere else where someone's going to treasure it more.
I love that. Both of those analogies. A lot of research went into the book. And obviously, aside from just the storytelling, there's a lot of practical advice. What was, you know, as you said before, Christina, no one tells you how to do these things. What was the kind of logistical or practical thing that was the biggest surprise to both of you, or, you know, the nastiest shock?
Probably harping too much on the American healthcare system doesn't do us any good in the UK, but that
Writing
was
in
a
the
real
healthcare
shocker.
section almost sent us to the hospital.
I mean,
ironically.
it's crazy.
Yeah, that was, I would say, probably one of the biggest surprises. But you know, the book is just stuffed with advice. I think there's a lot about re-entering the workforce that is very practical, and, you know, the steps that it sort of takes to, you know, get your LinkedIn and your social media profiles kind of ready to put out there.
It's stuff like money, because guess what? I mean, our chapters are almost done in like terror alert level, like money, and there's healthcare, and there's mental health and whatever. It's like, okay, I don't have any more money coming. What do I do with it? I mean, there's really practical stuff like, if you're going to the supermarket, you know how we get our phones or whatever, we're just bit bopping all our money away. Take 40, 50 quid or whatever it is to the supermarket so you're aware of what you're spending. And also with your mates, say if your mates, you're always going out to this bar this time this week or whatever it is. Hey guys, I lost my job. I can't really afford to do that, you know, this week. Maybe they'll take you out. Maybe they'll do something at home. And one of the experts said, I actually had a friend who'd lost a job and she wanted to save money, and I ended up saving money. Like, and I still got to hang out with her. So again, it comes from that honesty though. Saying, I'm in this pickle right now, and it's not going to be forever. It's never going to be forever. But if you can't be at home, again, not saying what happened to you and then pretending you can afford all this stuff, and you're going to like really put yourself in a pit.
We don't want to give away too much. We want people to buy the book and read the book. But
Yes,
what can you give me a favorite from all the amazing women you spoke to? You've referenced Carol Burnett and Oprah. What's a favorite firing story, if you can have one, or a takeaway that somebody gave you that you thought was really good advice?
No, I know I have my favorite.
I love Lisa Kudrow's because I think it really shows where, fate and just the courage to keep going kind of intertwine. Her story is that she was cast as Roz and Frasier. They did the first table reading. Like, the job was hers. They were ready to start, filming the pilot. And she, after the first reading, was told that they didn't think she was actually the right woman for Roz. So she was fired. Time goes by. She gets called to come and audition for Friends, walks into the room. Guess who's the showrunner on Friends? The same guy who fired her from Frasier. She obviously gets the part of Phoebe Buffay, and the rest is history. But I think what that lesson tells you is, don't light the building on fire on your way out. I think the sort of scorched earth theory is, it's tempting, especially in the era of social media and the tools that there's lots of ways to sort of, talk smack about your former employer. And, obviously she took the high road knowing that Hollywood's a small town and, these people could kind of come and go in her life. But that's sort of, I think the courage to kind of walk back into a room and audition for someone who has already decided you weren't right for a role just shows the sort of how courage and fate can really come together.
Can I just say I love how you light up when you say Phoebe Buffay. It's like Christina's like, it's like her saying Jesus Christ Almighty. I have two, but I'll do the first one quick. My first one is Tarana Burke, who is the founder of Me Too, and she was working for an arts organization in Philadelphia, and she was sort of the managing director, and she was running the finances, and she wanted to work with, survivors and girls in school, but had this other job. And one day she said to the board at the job, actually, you're spending all this money, we're going to run out of money. And they went, that's nice, you're fired. And she got fired, but if Tarana hadn't been fired from that organization, Me Too would not exist. That's pretty fateful and important. And secondly, yes, it is Carol Burnett. She was an usher at a movie theater in Hollywood in the 50s and was back in the day. Actually, even before we were born, who knew, where they used to play movies on a loop. They were playing this particular night Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train. And a couple came in 10 minutes before the end of the movie and they wanted to go in to watch it. And she was like, oh, no, please don't. You'll ruin it. Don't go in. Go get some popcorn, do something. And the manager, and they made a bit of a fuss. And the manager, who Carol described to me on the phone in the best way, he was certifiable, came over and fired her. And he ripped off her epaulets, threw her fez on the ground, and threw her out into Hollywood Boulevard. Cut to 25 years later when she received her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and she asked for it to be placed directly at the front of that theater.
That's so good.
That's where I think they got the definition of chef's kiss.
That is a mic drop moment. I love that for her. The book is called Cool Girls Get Fired. Obviously, everyone you spoke to and, the anecdotes that you've got in the book are women. It's a loaded question because I feel like we know the answers to this, but how do you think women receive being fired differently to men?
I mean, listen, I think it took us twice as long to get there and we worked twice as hard to make it happen. So I think a lot of it is just loaded in the fact that for, decades we've pushed harder and haven't gotten as far. So I think that's part of it. I think, when you get pushed from that slippery ladder, it hurts. And I think part of that is that we don't have that many stories. We haven't been telling ourselves, our sisters, our daughters, stories about super successful women suffering setbacks and carrying on and forging ahead. And so that's why we wanted to interview these women who were in the book, because they all are success stories. They all have had incredible careers after suffering, these blips in the scheme of things. But at the time, they feel insurmountable. And so that's why I think it was so important is for us to have more women being fired be part of their narratives.
And also, when you think about the workplace as a male construct, CEO, CFO, all of these titles, CMO, are all military terms. These all come from chief. So, we've been, again, yes, so we've been working alongside them and still getting paid 3/4 of the money. And we're not the sort of, it's harder for women. We know all of that. That is the baseline. But why does, and we don't think we're carrying all the rest of womanhood around on our backs every day. But when something like this happens, I think you do feel like that. But what we also have to remember is like, our ambitions change to this sort of corner office situation. This ambition for the corner office seems so dated now. It seems like Mad Men. When people are having martinis and dying at the table, it's like there's so many. Why do I want that? There's so many. Work is not linear. I was saying before, the economy can be your personality. And so again, like if you're push from this slippery rung, was that really the rung you wanted to be on? Was that really the sandpit you wanted to be playing in the whole time? Maybe there's a beach over there. You just didn't let yourself see it. So that's really, for women, again, going back to, women, we've been fighting for choice for our whole lives, for generations and generations. One, don't choose shame, but two, look out there to the breadth of the world and your experience when you even have that one beat. And oftentimes you don't have much longer than that because we've got to make money, we've got to pay our rent. But you do have that minute.
Tell me about working with a friend. I mean, awkward. You're both there, but
my God,
how did you split the workload? What was your collaboration like in reality?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty straightforward.
We're both magazine editors, so we know how to package things.
Yeah, I mean, the format of the book came pretty quickly. We knew we wanted those service chapters, then we knew we wanted the, sort of 15 women interviews.
I've got the jokes. The jokes are mine, structure's more Christina. Okay. But that was sort
easy
of how
division.
when I was like, let's Instagram all the cool girls get fired, and then Christina said that was a book. That's exactly exactly our process. Like Christina read the questions for this podcast and I didn't. This is exactly how it's doing.
It sounds like a dream partnership.
And it kind of is. No, we've not had one
We
crossword.
also worked together for so long, and, we were in the trenches together, and it was just, it came very easily. There were no fights.
We've not even had even one.
Great.
I know.
You're both quite jet lagged. Maybe this will be the trip.
I know, we'll get the case of the grumps. No, we'll just get a wine later. We'll be fine.
Good. Martini, we've had this conversation.
That's
Don't
right,
wine. Don't wine. You'll be fine.
Take the edge off.
I can't have you both here without talking about the shape of the media industry today. Obviously, that's something here that, we're interested in, invested ways. We talked before about the evolution of media, how that looks different. What is big question. What is your take on publishing media today, but in a positive way? What excites you about where we're headed?
Well, I think like Laura said before, we've, seen in the last 2 years so many prominent names and voices in journalism leave, established institutions and set up shop for themselves. They're setting up Substacks, they're launching podcasts as part of that media operation. They're, using existing social media platforms to communicate with their audiences. So I think that's been a really exciting, turn of events where the person becomes the brand. And, listen, it's not right for everyone, but, a lot of these people are propping up tiny media institutions around themselves. Maybe they're not employing 500 people yet, but they have 15. So I think that's been probably one of the most exciting shifts.
Yeah, and also I think it's given people some places to land, especially after, for example, like local news has been decimated in the United States. All of these legacy things, and it's like, you know what, let me try. And so I'm not going to have my mood, my day, or my fate controlled by some corporate bro who bought the whole company and wants to flip it. I think there's a lot of pride there. And because I was just reading this great interview with Tina Brown in the Times yesterday. She's like, journalism itself is being so compromised by these bloody billionaires. You know what I mean? And we're just like we're just not like checkers on a checkerboard. And people, I think, resent that and want to be like, you know what? I do have a voice. I do have something to say. And again, it is entrepreneurial, and not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but it is an avenue that's open, and it wasn't open just a couple of years ago. So it is exciting if you let yourself sort of glance at it, even if you want to go back to a regular job. So I think the fracturing of it is.
I think that was a subtle dig at
me. No,
even if you want to,
if you want to go
slum it.
She loves a pension. No, but even if you want to go back into a structure, there's just avenues open to you that have come about by this circumstance that you might just want to have a peek at.
Christina, was that always what you wanted? Did you always want to go back into full-time employment?
I didn't know what would come after I left the journal. I did give myself that beat, that minute to sort of think about what I loved and what I didn't love, and, you know, the ways that I wanted to show up differently. At the time, my daughter was a junior in high school, so I knew I only had 1 year left with her at home. And so I took the summer to really think about that. That was one of the luxuries afforded to me in the period that I left, was just that minute to kind of reestablish, re-engage. The job that I'm in now was something that didn't present itself immediately, but the CEO of Sotheby's called me in that moment when I was owning what had happened. I, you know, had sort of put the word out that I was fired, and he called me and said, you know, let's talk. And I thought, but you're not a media company. Like, everything I've ever done is within the confines of an established organization. Obviously, Sotheby's is established in many, many other ways. It's 281 years old now, but it had never really, you know, had a footprint in a traditional kind of media way. So that conversation was seeded in that early moment when I had been fired, but it took a minute for me to sort of work through what that could look like, and for them to sort of figure out where I could fit in the organization. So, you know, not everything happens very quickly. You know, and some days felt really long. Some days the only emails I got were things that I had subscribed to. So, but, you know, I did want to kind of weigh all my options. I obviously, you know, thought about setting up a structure like Laura has for herself, but I knew in the long run I couldn't be the invoice chaser, the face of the company, the, you know, all the things that come with, you know, being super entrepreneurial and kind of
irony.
Yes. Well, now the
This
book
book
is
is highly entrepreneurial.
It's true.
And there's a world that we're building that's coming along with that. So, you know, neither one of us, you know, even though I sort of joke that Christina likes that structure and I'm just whooping around, you know, we have created something that is going to become something bigger. And while we stick with our routine and our roots and all the things that we know well, something we're really proud to build. And it's foreign and it's exciting, but to the thing I keep going on about, it's ours.
Do you have a roadmap for that? Do you know where it's going in your head?
Just lurching around. We're in England. No,
Okay, we've got as far as this
We've
week.
got as far as
Yeah.
at the moment we're only just over a month from the publication, so we're still promoting the book. And but what we've found is, even beyond the sales of the book, the amount of women, there's just again this wave. It's back to almost like when we posted the Instagram. This deluge of women again. Here I am with my cool girls, a picture of girls out for dinner. You know, we know there's a community and a network there. And I personally also love the stories of women who got fired and then started something themselves. Or we were at an event the other night at Morgan Stanley, and there was one young girl, and she's like, you know, I really like to meet someone like this. And I'd met somebody on LinkedIn. Like I think we really love the idea of introducing people to each other as well, to create something again bigger than themselves. So. But yeah, we're going to promote this book. We're going to have a nap, and then we'll fire it up next year.
I like it. Finally, number one piece of advice that isn't don't panic if you've been fired.
I mean, Oprah says it best. The setback is a setup.
Laura?
To the shame part, a banker called Sally Krawcheck, she's pretty fierce, pretty terrifying. What if you're worried about what everybody else is thinking about you? She said, nobody else cares.
So succinct. Ladies, all the cool girls get fired. Available everywhere?
Everywhere. Wherever books are sold.
Wherever you get your books from. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
So fascinating.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. And thank you for listening. Please, if you enjoyed this conversation, do subscribe. It really helps us out. Comment, like, all the things. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.